Okay. Hey, everybody. Just going to make a quick share on the page here, and then we are going live with this thing to handle BlackBolt today. And it's going to be a cool one. As long as Facebook doesn't fight with me. um, I am taking on BlackBolt from the Jack Kirby original original design. So that's the one that I'm going with here. But I'm using, of course, hopefully a cool modern look so that we can see this character pop up. And unfortunately, the Marvel Now setup apparently has BlackBolt whispering and controlling his powers. BlackBolt is one of the Inhumans, which originally appeared in Thor, and then showed up in the Avengers, and then showed up and crossed over into the X-Men, and has been unfortunately classified as they call themselves metas or Inhumans in that book, and that's where they actually reference the word metas to compete against humans and as an alternative to mutants. But they're classified in the Marvel Universe as mutants. They are just a subspecies underground, so we have to deal with that. I don't necessarily agree with that, but Marvel has control of them instead of, instead of another studio or whatnot, because they can't say mutants in TV or film anymore because it falls under the contract negotiations and licensing handling of Fox. So they own anything that is declared a mutant, just for sake of argument. So we're going with the meta human or the inhuman approach on this one. So that's where I decided to go with it. But yeah, they've got that new Inhuman series coming up, and it's been sadly it's been messed up in the comics now for a little while, and on the screen apparently BlackBolt can talk, which if any of you know the history behind the character, he is just a huge force to be reckoned with because of the fact that he can't speak. Okay, that's what this tuning fork thing here is. It's a translator for him to translate his thoughts into psychic energy so that he can speak without blowing people up or causing major damage with the sonic booms that his voice and vocal cords cause. Now they have it set to where he can whisper and talk a little bit, and it's frankly sad, because this character was all about his powers being his strength and his demeanor in having to control the power of his vocal cords. And now, like I said, he can talk, and it's just really sad that he can do that. Bear with me just a second. My screen flipped on me, and I want to make sure you guys can see. There we go. Sorry about that. But yeah, I'm not one to normally rip on that, the Marvel Now stuff, but I'm telling you, man, that one is a disappointment to me. It is just a grievous act. This character's been around forever, and they had to mess with him. And it was one I wish they wouldn't have, because all of his power and his mystique and his inner turmoil that gave him such a great charisma, even on the comic page, is now just completely depleted um, to a bad level. Um, and I just found that out because I haven't read anything in a while, and I had heard that he could talk. I had heard the rumor about it, but I had just seen it for myself here a little while ago when I was touching up on the character to see what he looked like today compared to what he used to look like, and see which one I was going to go with on the card. And it's just, yeah, it's bad. It's bad. Um, I will say this though, John Boy Mayer. I've known him for a long time. He's a professional artist. I've known him for a long time. He works with Marvel and DC and bounces around now. And I think he was with DC for a while for the Batman and Robin stuff, and then he moved on to um, doing some stuff for the Inhumans. And it's beautiful work, the stuff that he's been doing on that series. Inhuman Prime is what he's working on, in the Inhumans Prime. And it's very unfortunate because of the fact that he was working with Todd McFarlane and Greg Capullo, and he won the Spawn comic book contest where they took him under his wing, him under their wing, and trained him to work with the Spawn title and got him all revved up and stuff, and got him in a few issues of that. And I mean, he'd been freelancing on DeviantArt and small comics for years on end, this guy. And he's been perfecting his craft, and he is a phenomenal artist and earned every bit that he gets. But he, unfortunately, I think that he's one of the guys that got manipulated and so much money thrown at him from Marvel and DC both. And, they love stealing talent from places like Image and Dark Horse and, IDW and these smaller places. But, if you're all about working for the big two and that's your paycheck is, what you want, then hey, more power to you. I disagree with that. It's unethical to me, in my opinion, but I don't hold it against him personally because he's a great guy. And like I said, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing anybody because I'm not. But he's one of those that got snatched away by DC than by Marvel. So I'm glad he's doing a lot of work. But like I said, sadly, though, he's traded up. And now with Marvel going down and DC going, under with their stuff, maybe there's a lesson to be learned in that. Don't flip ships because you end up getting wet. And there's an old saying where I'm originally from down in East Texas. And, I'm sure you've heard it, but don't switch horses in midstream because you end up falling off and getting wet. And that's pretty much where that comes from. And, what that analogy means. And it's sad, but it is what it is. And he'll, just like anybody else, he'll have karma to pay for that. But like I said, nothing personal against him. It's just not something I would do. But again, this character, it's not specifically about him. It's about the artwork that he does on that book, which I do love and enjoy. And if he's there, then I may as well take him up on it because it was a great book for the couple issues that I've seen. I think I got the first two maybe, and that's the first Marvel comic book since Superior Spider-Man that I've purchased in years. I just don't follow them unless they're trades, and I collect specific stuff. Deadpool's one of the titles that I collect, but I don't collect a lot of comic books anymore. A lot of paper comics. Most of them are digital, and most of them are independent because of that fact right there. Marvel and DC just don't have it anymore. Not knocking those guys, not meaning to by any means. If you're a Marvel or DC fan, that's fine. I am too for the classic stuff. It's just for the modern stuff, I'm just not getting the Marvel Now buzz that a lot of people are. And, more power to them. I mean, they're trying to reach a different market, but I think they're going about it the wrong way, but whatever. So, like I said, not getting on the soapbox today. Just saying. So it is what it is. Now I'm cutting in all this anatomy first, which I don't normally do, but due to kind of an homage for Jack Kirby, I really wanted to do that. Yeah, Jason, that's it's the original incarnation. Yeah, absolutely. He's not going to be wussing out, as it were, because I'm not going to draw that. I don't do the ones that most of the modern stuff, like that, because I just don't agree with it. But it is what it is. I mean, Spider Gwen was a request for a friend of mine, and I thought I'd knock that out and be fun with it and do something more modern. But like I said, I'm not after picking on anybody. Um, and the Inhumans um, made him king. Matt, to answer your question, the Inhumans made him the king of the underworld where they live, which is basically Journey to the Center of the Earth. It's Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, which Stan was a huge Jules Verne fan, still is, from what I understand. He was a Jules Verne fan, and he did the whole Journey to the Center of the Earth thing, and thought that would be cool. What if there were, instead of dinosaurs and giant animals or mini animals or whatever, the secret island, you had another race of mutants under there, and that's what he did. So you got them under the sea, which is Namor, and then you've got them, which that's what he converted Namor into when Namor came over from Timely. I can't remember the guy that created the Submariner, but I can't remember. I'll have to get back with you guys on that one. I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah, he made Submariner fight the Nazis and all kinds of stuff, kind of like Cap did before Timely, and then before Marvel. So, and just a little bit of trivia for you. Do you guys know that there is a public domain Captain America that was originally a lawyer? And yes, I'm blacking this out right here because I want this shade to go across here, even though I know that his stripes come down and they're colored and whatnot. Matter of fact, I will erase it because I want to put that in there proper. But I was going to run it across his shoulder, but I will run it across his chest, the top of his shoulder and his chest here. Do you guys know that there is a public domain Captain America? He uses a gun. He doesn't have superpowers, but he fights kind of like Batman. He's a cross between Batman and Daredevil. He's an attorney, which is ironic within itself. But yeah, his name is Grant Gardner, and you can see old serials of him online. I have a character coming up based off of an adaptation of him called Public Defender. Yeah, I know it's camp, but you can't use Captain America. It's trademarked. So, you could have, I guess, Grant Gardner Captain America, but it's not the same. But it is a movie adaptation of the original Kirby Captain America, Kirby and Simonson. So figure that one out. You could make that adaptation. You couldn't have the super soldier, but you could definitely have Captain America. I mean, it's the same uniform and everything, which I found to be pretty daggum neat. I'm going to modify this just a little bit because I want to make sure of what's going on and I get all the gaps in for the belt and whatnot. So, because he's got that whole diamond thing going on right here. So I want to carve that in. But yeah. Yep. Not a lot of people want to adapt, take the time to adapt a character like that, but at Firestorm, I do, many public domain characters adapted into um, mainstream stuff, and we see those type of characters all over the place. So I don't really bother worrying about it too much because it's already done, 9 times out of 10. But fortunately, my Firestorm universe timeline is completely altered because I blew up the Earth in 6 pages, which you guys are going to find out about when I release Origin this coming weekend, finally. So you'll be able to check that out. And yes, I said that. I blew up the Earth in 6 pages. It's amazing. Had the spirit of redemption come in and save the people of Earth because they didn't deserve to die that way. So yeah. I get asked about it all the time. How did you bring Catman in? Well, for one, I rewrote the story. It's Catman Evolution. It's his grandson from the 1950s Holyoke character. So, which I adopted into the Firestorm universe and adapted the story. I did that with all of them. Did that with many characters as well as my own original creations. So that's why we have the variations we do. But not just anyone can do that, though, because you have to have you either have to, by public domain rules, you either have to make your own adaptation of it, or you have to use the original version of it, and it's restricted. And there are laws and guidelines and stuff, and you have to do them that way, or else you're in trouble. A lot of people don't want to go that route, but that's what Firestorm is. Hence the phoenix in my logo. That's what that company is about, is resurrecting the good guy versus bad guy scenario and the phoenix. So, a lot of people don't realize that Captain Marvel is in public domain from Wiz Comics. The one DC calls Shazam. DC trademarked Billy Batson, his name, and whatnot, and I have my own version of that. And the title is called Only the Strong. It'll be coming out this spring 2018. I have an adaptation of that. It's not the same character, but it's based on the character. Got a couple of books like that. So, seeing Disney take Marvel as an IP property and change it and manipulate it into the monster that it is now, be it good or bad in your own opinion, is fine. I do I do have some intellectual properties that are unique to the public domain, and then I have properties that are strictly creator owned. But technically they're all creator owned because they're my adaptations. But there are characters that are strictly public domain based. And like I said, the loophole there is to either use them as an adaptation of the original. So you have the original source material, which you can use, or you have the adaptation of the source material into your own storyline, and you have to figure out a way to make it work within the means of him or her showing up as the original character. So otherwise, you cross over and you break the public domain rules. That's why most people will say, hey, you're reinventing that, but you can't do it that way. And you got to go through a lot of legal tape to get it done. And you got to make sure no other companies released it. You got to make sure certain issues aren't done. If they don't fall in public domain, it gets rough. And, the reason I'm saying this is because of the fact that, one, it explains more of Firestone Comics, but it also explains the path that Disney is taking with their IPs, because they absorbed IPs, because originally they weren't anything but a public domain company. All the fairy tales that we've grown up with and as film and stuff for Disney, those are all public domain properties. Those are fables that they turned into their own version and made their own incarnation of. So, you got to think about where all that's coming from, and then you got to think about what they did. Pirates of the Caribbean is one of their most modern incarnations of public domain. Lone Ranger, it fell into public domain. So, that's where they got that from. Walt Disney built up a lot of original properties, but he was also founded on public domain animation because he wanted to buy up and build up all of the real estate for his tourism practice, because that company is not commercially based as a film company. It is a real estate and tourism company. And the funny thing about that is, if you think about it, every time Disney puts out a movie, they're getting you to pay to give yourself an emotional bond with their characters and then give them word of mouth. And that's exactly what they're doing every time you watch one of their movies. You pay the $14-15 for a ticket, you go into the movie, you watch it, you come out with an experience, and then what do? You go and tell everybody, and you freak out like a screaming girl at a 1960s band concert, jumping around screaming because you want that t-shirt, or you want that lunchbox, or you want that poster, or you want that action figure, and you say how cool and how emotionally bonded you are to the great story that they tell in their movies. Well, think about that. That's a multi-billion-dollar commercial that you're paying to give them free word-of-mouth advertising about. You pay to watch their commercials. You pay to spread the word about it and buy their DVDs, and then you spread the word by wearing their property as the biggest billboard unit in the world. The human population running around, exposing yourself. You're like, well, I don't endorse anybody. Every time you wear a property that has somebody's icon on it, i.e. Spider-Man, i.e. Batman, i.e. Superman, i.e. Wonder Woman, you're promoting those companies. You are a walking billboard for those companies. I wear comic shirts all the time. And under legalities of my own publishing company, I have to be very careful about which ones I wear and what I wear them in, because I could cause an infringement issue by talking about Firestone Comics and wearing a Marvel t-shirt in one of my videos and exposing myself, like that. So I have to be very cautious about that kind of stuff. As comic creators, a lot of you are independent comic creators. You have to start thinking about that too, because you're wearing and soliciting and endorsing their properties while you're talking about your stuff. And you could get into legal trouble for that, because you're representing Marvel at that point by wearing that t-shirt while you're doing your advertisement on your business, which isn't reflected in their properties or ownership. So you cause a conflict of interest and they can sue you for it. Think about that one. But they're not going to complain while you're walking down the street promoting your stuff, because of the fact that when you wear their property, you're promoting them. So every time you go to a comic book con and your art is being pumped out, or you do an interview and you're wearing a Marvel shirt or a DC shirt or whatever other property that's not your brand, think about that. You're endorsing that other company. Scary. I'm not saying run out and boycott them or anything. I'm just saying flat out that it's the biggest billboard marketing system in the world, is clothing, wearing these symbols on your chest as a human being. Think about that. Every time you buy your kid a lunchbox, and they want to represent, Marvel. Well, guess what's happening? They're buying Marvel property, and you are buying advertising for them. You're not buying their merchandise. You're buying their advertising disguised as merchandise. Think about that. So, just saying. It's like, wow, I've got a Marvel lunchbox. Wow, I've got this Marvel action figure. Wow, you've got the biggest Marvel advertisement possible. And you're showing it on YouTube, and you're showing it on this, or you're showing it on that. Every time I draw one of these characters, I'm giving them free advertising. And I know that. But I'm okay with it because of the fact that I'm associating myself with the brand of mainstream comics. And I'm okay with that. Because I know I'm doing it. But be sure that you understand what you're doing when you're doing it. Just business-wise, just common sense. Think about it, because I guarantee it, Disney and Warner Brothers are. If you're not, they are. That's what they want you to do, is wear it and don't think about it. And like I said, I'm not letting you know this to pick on you. I'm letting you know this so that you understand what you're doing in your own business if you're creating comics and you wonder why these companies are everywhere. It's because they pay you, they pay to put that stuff in front of you, and they pay to convince you to hook into their stories and watch and follow it. Anybody that's a fan is also a walking billboard and a word of mouth advertising agent for them. It's free sales force. It's called associate marketing. You're representing the brand not because you need to or get paid to. It's because you like it and use it. And by that comes down to what's called consumer marketing and consumer generated marketing. So every time you represent them, every time you represent a song you like, it's just like coming up and saying that, you like a musician or you like a song or whatever. Every time you mention that stuff, you're coming out and saying, I endorse this product. Now, there are a lot of people that will argue that point, and they'll be screaming at me later, we don't endorse anything. We don't endorse. If you wear it and it's a brand, you're endorsing it. Every time you buy a piece of clothing and you say, I like, for example, not to specifically point anybody out because I have no association with them, but another example would be Gucci. If you're running around with a pair of Gucci loafers on that's, trugging around on your clogs, guess what's going to happen? Every time someone sees that, you're endorsing Gucci. Every time you run to the gym with your Nikes on, you're endorsing Nike. Every time you endorse any of these brands by buying them and wearing them, that's the whole point. You're branding them. That's why they sell you stuff. That's why they put their label on there. That's why they put their logo on there. So when you buy it, your friends will see it and, hey, I love those shoes. What brand are they? Oh, they're Nike. Okay, I'll run out and get me some. It's branding. It is what it is. And so many people don't want you to realize that that's what that is because they don't want you to know what they're doing when they're selling you stuff. Because then you'll be going, well, these shoes suck and I wear them all the time. I need to quit that. And then you'll drop that shoe brand and then they'll be like, oh, no, we didn't make the sale this month. He didn't buy a new pair of shoes, or, she didn't buy a new pair of shoes, or whatever. Or he didn't buy another Marvel t-shirt that he's got 20 of. And believe me, I know firsthand because I'm a t-shirt collector. I did the suit and tie thing. I did the uniform thing. I don't do that anymore. Hardly ever. Unless it's a special occasion, of course, then I'll, dress up. But I'm a shirt and t-shirt and shoes and jeans and easygoing type of person. Like I said, granted, I do dress up once in a while. But it's one of those things where I just don't in commonplace because it's easier for me to do so in wearing one of my, my t-shirts or whatever have you. But yeah, think about that next time you go to Walmart, or Target or one of these chain stores that everybody commonly goes to, and don't say you don't. Don't say you don't. But Next time you're in one of these places, think about what you're looking at when you stop and you go, "Oh wow, I really like that T-shirt." Well, why? It's because you've had an emotional bond with that character for all these years. With the comic books that you've experienced all those stories and tales from. That's what comic books are. They're story connections, but we don't do them in the meaning that a lot of the Disney stuff is done for, because they make movies on purpose, not to make money, but to make commercials to sell other merchandise, because that's why they don't care. They make really good movies because they want you to go to them and get addicted to them. Think about that one. That's not true, Kevin. That's absolutely not true, man. Because there's a 75-year lifespan limit on copyrights in print. It can only last 75 years. It can last 75 years, which was the current lifetime of the time pre 1920. But the thing is, the 1920 stuff, yeah, you can do it. But here's the thing: copyrights and trademarks go different. All right, trademarks are names on the outsides of books. Copyrights are only extended for lifetimes of the book until they're recycled. Okay, their lifetime of the creator, which is up to 75 years, then they fall into default, which goes into public domain. So allow me to explain that real quick while I'm finishing up. What public domain does, it goes for a 75-year span, then it goes into public domain. If it's not renewed by the company or the family members of the individual that does it. If you reprint it and reintroduce it as a collection, you can recopyright it. Okay? But after a certain point, there's only so many family members and there's only so many companies that follow up with this stuff, so it falls public domain, period. A lot of comic books and a lot of movies and a lot of other stuff falls to the wayside because of the fact that they never renew it. They just leave it there, okay? They leave it stationary and they leave it there. There's a difference, all right? There's a big difference. Public domain allows you to, it only goes for 75 years. But the problem comes in the legalities of public domain, okay? Public domain is ruled by adaptation and original concept adaptation influenced by the original project, or public free use and reproduction of the original content. You have to be very careful with that because you'll get sued. Because the original owners or the government will step in and say, you're misrepresenting that. You can't use it that way. There are rules to it. You have to, if you use the original material, you have to publish it in its original form and completion. If you adapt from it, you have to change and make your own original creation out of that, and you have to post it as influenced by, an adaptation of, and you have to reintroduce the original owner as part of it. I've fought this tooth and nail. I've gone through it step by step with many, many attorneys, many hours of research, and this is what I do for my comic books. And so everything that is original adaptations from for the Firestorm universe, which is completely new and influenced by adaptation only, I have to put in influenced by or adapted from or originally inspired by, and put in the concept and the creator of where it came from. Every issue of Catman Evolution has right in the front of it, it has a bio clause right in the front of it that says influenced by the original Catman series published by Holyoke Publishing. And it's got the creator name in there as well. So, I've got all that marked off. You have to do your due diligence here, because you will get yourself in a court situation and a lawsuit and all that fun stuff, and have some people claiming against you really quick if you don't. You have to be very cautious about that. But that 1920s thing, it is a farce. It is a complete myth, because anything populated in public domain falls under a certain timeline, okay? But there are things out there that were published pre-1920, and you have to be very careful with that. Some of the Sherlock Holmes books are public domain. A lot of the some of them. a lot of the Burroughs stuff, Tarzan, Conan, stuff like that. You have to be very cautious and careful with that because you can get sued. Who was it? Dynamite Entertainment. Dynamite Entertainment. They did their Power series. They did the Superpower series where they took all of the original. They took everybody from the public domain and made them into the Superpowers project. Okay, and then took those original characters and then started manipulating them. And they had what was it? The Prince of Mars, John Carter, and they had what was her name? The Princess of Mars. I can't remember her name now off the hand. Deja, I believe it was. They made a book, a spinoff of her, and they got sued for it because they didn't own the copyrights. Because what they did was they went in for John Carter, Prince of Mars. They went in for the Prince of Mars or the Warlord of Mars or something like that, and then they tried to boycott. They tried to take on some of the other books and go in and boycott and bypass the publisher rights, saying that they had rights to them in public domain because they were all in public domain. Not all of them did. There are select issues of certain books that you can't use in comparison to what you think is public domain due to the fact that the character is in public domain in one book but not in another. There are select characters and select issues and select ways you can use these characters. I've had a legal team working for the last, oh, good Lord, 10 years, 15 years, maybe even longer to get the characters that I do have approved for titles and upcoming projects in the Firestorm universe, which are all original creations and adaptations. So I'm perfectly safe. But still, due to legalities, I have to be careful on how I present them so that I don't end up getting sued by the original publisher, the original publisher's family, or by someone else that has an adaptation that crosses over through absorption or assimilation of a lot of these old publishers, because Marvel and DC own a few of these publishers, and you got to be careful. Some of them, are owned by Marvel. Some of them are owned by DC, and they just haven't used them in years, and they've manipulated their own version. Okay, so you have to be cautious of that. Plastic Man, that is huge with DC Comics, is also in public domain. I have a variation, an adaptation of that character coming out in the original public domain form. Plastic Man is public domain, but you have to be careful because you can't use Plastic Man in the way that DC spells it on the cover, and you have to vary it. You can't say like Catman for me, for Holyoke. I couldn't use Catman. I had to use, because DC owns that. They own that trademark because they have their own version of the Holyoke Catman that they turned into a 60s villain for Batman. So to give you an example there, I can't use Catman on the cover, but what I can use is Catman Evolution. Okay? But I can use Catman in the book all I want to, because you can't trademark, you can't copyright and trademark a word to where you can't use it on the interior as conversation or script. But you can trademark it on top up at the cover to where you can't use it on the outside of the book. That's what the trademark covers. So be very cautious. It covers the title and the use of that title as a name. Okay, so be very cautious about how you check that out, and get with a public domain expert or a continuity publishing licensing expert and start looking up at that stuff. It's very expensive, I will tell you. It cost me quite a bit of money per domain and per name and per title and per trademark and per copyright that I have. Be very cautious about that, because you can't just go saying them willy-nilly, because you'll get sued. You really will. You really, really will. Like the Wiz version of Captain Marvel, for example, you can't go off and start saying, Shazam. You can't have him say Shazam like he used to. They trademarked Shazam, so you can't have him say you can have him say Shazam in the book, but if you want to know something funny, that was a typo. The letterer got it wrong when they did the Wiz comics. So DC owns Shazam with an N, with an M, but the actual word is the name for all the gods represented, and it's actually Neptune on the end of it. It's an N, not an M for Mercury, but an N for Neptune. And if you look at the original copyright and storyline of the book, they mispronounced it. So the Wiz Shazam says Shazam, just to let you know. You guys can research that and check it out and have a little fun with it yourself, just so you know and know what's going on a little more. But I'm going to tell you, the legalities behind it are very, very deep, and you must be very cautious with these things because they will sue you like no tomorrow if you don't do it right every step of the way. But anyway, I hope that helps. I know that I've gone on a long time with this. I hope you know. But hey, Tom, glad you made it, man. But yeah, I've been tearing this stuff up for years, building up great superheroes, great villains, great adaptations in my own original universe, which Firestorm is self-contained. And yeah, if you have any questions about it, let me know and I'll help you out if I can, or point you in the right direction to get you where you need to go, because I'm glad to help, because I do a lot of public domain work and that's fun stuff. I love it. But I'll tell you, if you're going to go in the comics, be very cautious about what you use and what you don't, because it'll bite you in the butt. You know, I've got a big project coming out for my webcomic that I keep talking about. The legalities behind that took me 4 years to get through the red tape before I got permission to use it, because of the fact that I had to do it a certain way. So, yeah, be very cautious about it because it'll bite you. But anyway, there's BlackBolt. I hope you guys dig it. I'm going to call it a day. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. Talk to you tomorrow. Speaking of which, for tomorrow's card, running with this theme, I have Medusa coming up tomorrow. And then for Thursday, I have Sasquatch from Alpha Flight. And then for Friday, for the Friday giveaway, for the Friday character card giveaway, I have Elektra coming up. So if you guys want to join up, keep word on that. Spread the word about it. I'm going to be posting Elektra as the Friday giveaway character. If you want an 11x17, just to be fair for what I'm giving Jason in the one that I'm doing probably tomorrow for him, his live for last week, I'm going to tell you, check it out, Elektra this week. Thank you guys so much. Check you later.